But the thing that we're talking about now in this session is how can we reclaim data? How can we insist that in fact that data should have never belonged to repressive states and should never have belonged to corporations in the first place? What we were talking about is that we in fact create the data. If we look at Facebook, if we look at Google, if we look at the other major sources of user data, this is data that we are creating as citizens, as subjects, and as such, we need to reclaim our right to control it. So the question that we're working with is, by what means could we make this data our commons? By what organization? How would we govern it? Who would be in charge? Who would have ownership? What would the rights and responsibilities be? Could we think of a global foundation that would manage big data rather than corporations and governments? Can we think of integrating this into already existing democratic systems, whether they're national or international? How can we then take our data back? What challenges will we face trying to seize back the data that has been seized from us from major corporations like Facebook, like Google, like the NSA?
So there is one group that has gathered quite early that wanted to explore the possibilities of creating an international group, body, entity, whatever, that is taking care of a commons control network of people who work on proceedings of how individuals are able to control their own data and to determine what is done with that data in the commons.
The goal with this workshop is to try and develop a position paper, a policy paper, so to speak, which can actually address issues of what does big data really mean, what is the digital commons, and how can we develop governance frameworks? How can we develop policies, processes that can address issues of privacy, access, and how data is being utilized today? And it's complex because on one hand, you want to develop processes which reinforce the idea of democratic governance, but then on the other hand, it's a slippery slope. How do you know that the governance framework that you develop is not going to turn into the governance framework that is already existent within corporations and governments? Google started off with the idea of making technology accessible to everyone, of making the internet searchable. And yet today, Google is dominating the search world and utilizing our information and data for monetary purposes. How do we know that this similar kind of process is not going to impact the current framework that we are trying to develop? And that's what the conversation is about. It is going back to the roots about the idea of individual choice, individual freedom. What is the digital commons? Are we truly aware of it? And how can we now build a bridge to create this governance framework?
Well, I think the policy paper, first and foremost, is of interest for the participants of this workshop because each and every one is a multiplier in their own rights. So they can bring this statement to their own communities, discuss it with them, and see how they can implement it.
So we're just trying to think through these challenges because the risk is that in the wake of the revelations in the Snowden files and given everything that we've learned about the state of data surveillance, most people become aware of these facts and then they lose all hope because it seems that the problem is huge, it's beyond our control, it seems to be beyond the control even of governments and laws. But we want to take a very bold stance and say no. This is a problem that we're facing together, and we can't simply retreat into fatalism or pessimism We need to take an optimistic, a proactive, and a creative look and say, what else could be possible? And even if all we produce is the seeds of something else that can grow later, I think it'll be a success. Because what we're doing is we're intervening in the imagination rather than intervening primarily in policy or in technology. We're simply saying that the imagination that we have of what big data is, what it could be, what its governance could be, and whose control it could be under, could be totally different. And so it's a very exciting process.